So we're going to talk about voice today. You might hear the voice of my screaming child in the background, but, bear with me. So we have a couple things we want to talk about how to use your voice correctly so that you don't damage your voice. So the first thing is correct breathing. So you want to breathe from your diaphragm. And this is a muscle located between the abdomen and the bottom of the rib cage. So if you find that little V that your rib cage creates kind of right underneath your upper chest, and then kind of right above where your belly button is, that's deep down in there. That's where your diaphragm is found. And so just a little activity. Go ahead and lie on the floor and put a book on top of your chest, kind of where that diaphragm is, a little higher. Lie the book flat on your stomach and breathe as you normally would. So go ahead and do that real quick. Do you notice, is the book moving up and down? Try to breathe in a way that the book moves noticeably when you breathe. So breathe extra big breaths. So if you notice, when you take in a big breath, your chest expands because it's filling your lungs with air. And when you breathe out, your chest contracts because it's releasing that air out of your lungs. So now go ahead and stand up and put your hand on your stomach, kind of that same place the book was, and try to move the same way the book moved. If it feels the same way as when you were lying on the ground, that's breathing with your diaphragm. A lot of times what will happen is when people are taking a big, deep breath in, they lift their shoulders up and they try and suck their belly in to take in that big breath. But the problem with that is that you're not actually letting your lungs fill with air. You're doing the opposite of what you want to do. So you want to fill your lungs like you're filling a balloon. And that's how you are able to control your breathing and use only the amount of air you need to. Because if you're singing a long solo or delivering a long monologue, you're going to need your breath to last more than just one quick sentence. So, breath control is when we speak correctly, and it allows us to speak without having a shaky voice or losing our breath. That's why breath control is so important. So let's do another activity. Go ahead and inhale and hold for about 10 seconds. And when you do that, you're going to say this little silly tongue twister. Silly Susie swam as the shark surfaced in the sea at sunset. So let's go ahead and stand in proper posture. We have our feet about shoulder width apart. Our shoulders are down. And we're going to take in that deep breath. So we're going to breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Silly Susie swam as the shark surfaced in the sea at sunset. Hopefully you said that with me. So when you say that in a normal volume without projecting your voice, it's not hard to get through that sentence. But what's hard is when you try and project your voice. So the way we are able to project is by pushing that air as far as we can out in a controlled way. So we don't want to strain our voice. If ever you feel that like pain in your throat, that's your body telling you you're damaging your vocal cords. Stop. So don't do that. But if you're pushing the air out, it'll actually allow you to control how loud your voice is and make it as loud as you need it to be or as quiet as you need it to be and still be heard. So let's try and do that one more time. Okay. And imagine that when you are exhaling this time, you are pushing that air from your mouth down a really long tunnel. And you want to get the sound all the way to the end of the tunnel with just how much air you push out of your mouth. Okay, so here we go. You're going to deep breath in, standing in good posture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Project with me. Silly Susie swam as the shark surfaced in the sea at sunset. Now, if you felt like you used more air that time, you probably did it right. But if you ran out of air, that probably means that you need to work on your breath control, build up that diaphragmatic muscle. Okay. Now, volume is the force of air that determines how loudly or softly a person speaks. So that's what volume is. It's a force of air that you push out of your mouth, just like we just did. Okay. The next thing you're going to want to do is do a little activity. Go ahead and grab a piece of paper, wherever you can find one. and place it in front of your face and watch as the paper moves when you say these 3 words: pop, plop, and pop. The first time, we're not going to push too much air out. We're just going to use our regular volume. So gently holding that paper in front of your mouth. You're not clasping it so hard that it's impossible to move. Just kind of gently with 1 or 2 fingers. You have pop, plop, pop. So if your paper moved at all, then it was feeling a little bit of the air. Now let's try it this time and really project our voice and see how much more that paper moves. Because remember, if it's about the force of air that you're pushing out of your mouth, it should move more. Ready? Pop, plop, pop. Hopefully you saw it move a lot more if you were pushing that air forward. So what's the difference between projection and shouting? Well, projection is that control of the volume of your voice, how loud or quiet. It's not straining your voice and getting that pain in your throat. It's like when you go to Six Flags and you ride all the rides all day and you scream as you ride the rides. At the end of the day, your throat hurts, right? Because you've actually damaged your vocal cords. Hopefully not permanently, but if you keep doing that over and over again in that same way, you will damage your vocal cords. And so actors have to take care of their instrument and their voice. And so you want to work on correct projection so that you don't hurt your vocal cords that way. And that's where that controlled volume comes in. So projection is determined by how much breath control you have behind your voice. And that's what we have to remember. So the question I want you to think about is, why do we still have to learn about projecting our voice if microphones exist? So think about that for a second. Why would we spend all this time working on projection when we have this magical device that if you put it in front of your voice, it makes your voice louder? Well, there's lots of reasons. The first one is because a microphone can only project what it is given. So it's like the difference between a microscope and a magnifying glass. So a microscope can see those atomic sized items, right? So you can make these tiny, tiny things that with the naked eye you couldn't even see bigger. A magnifying glass, you have to be able to see the item with the naked eye, but you can make it bigger from what you see. So like you can look at a spider and make it bigger. You can look at an ant and make it bigger. A microphone is like a magnifying glass. You have to give it something to make it louder for the audience. If you don't project enough into the microphone, it can't make it louder. Okay, so that's why it's important to make sure you're projecting your voice. The other reason is because technology, as wonderful as it is, we all know is not perfect. And there's lots of things that could go wrong with your technology that you can't control as an actor. And you have to compensate with being able to project. So for example, there could be feedback. There could be a loss of battery. Maybe the cord gets disconnected. Maybe there's interference with all the other wireless devices in your audience. So it's important to really learn about projection so that you can make up for the fact that your mic may not work all the time. The other reason is you might be in a show with 50 other people and you may not be able to have a microphone because we just can't support that many microphones. And that's a lot of times the case. Usually in our shows, we only use max of 10 microphones. And in our musicals, we have 50 people. So the majority of those people are not going to get a microphone. And so they have to be heard with just the projection of their voice. Now, what's the difference between projection and shouting? Well, projection is that controlled volume, whereas shouting, you have no control. If you think about sometime you've gotten really upset with your parents or your sibling and you've just started screaming because you're so upset, you're not in control. You might look back at that later and be like, wow, I had no idea. I was so mad and I couldn't control my emotions because you were screaming so hard. It's not controlled. Projection has to be controlled. And it's because, again, your actors are performing sometimes 8 shows a week. And so they have to be able to always project and be loud enough in a way that doesn't hurt their voice. So why is it better to project rather than shout? Just like I said, so that you don't damage your voice. And it's also easier to understand if you're in that projection rather than shouting. So it's not enough to just be loud. You have to also articulate. And articulating means speaking as clearly as possible. So, what's the best way to articulate? Open your mouth. If you keep your lips together and try and talk like this, then it's very hard to understand you. You have to open your mouth in order to get all those consonants and vowels out clearly. One thing that we often forget about, especially where we live in the Midwest, are those ending consonants. So words like bucket, cabinet, count, and kept, we often kind of swallow that last sound. So it sounds like bucket, cabinet, count, and kept, instead of bucket, cabinet, count, and kept. So you have to be extra careful about ending consonants. You also want to really open your mouth wide when you're saying those vowel sounds. A, E, I, O, U. So think about that. Go ahead and say those words with me with the ending consonants. Ready? Together, articulate. Say all those consonant sounds clearly by moving your mouth and opening it wide. 1, 2, 3. Bucket, cabinet, count, and kept. Good. Now let's try those vowel sounds. The A, E, I, O, U. Ready? 1, 2, 3. A, E, I, O, U. So think about how did your shape of your mouth change with each sound. And those are the things you have to really, really be aware of when you're acting. Because it's not enough to just be loud. You have to also be understood. But the really important part and what makes it acting and not just saying words loud and clear is inflection. Inflection is the emotion you show in your voice. It takes it from just loud talking to really feeling what you're saying and making it clear to the audience what the intention and the tone is of what you're saying. So the big question, well, how do you change your inflection? This is something we don't really think about when we're talking day to day, but we do it naturally in our normal speech, so we have to exaggerate it on stage. The first thing you do is change the pitch of your voice. You musicians will know this term because you use it a lot with music as well. So with pitch, it's the highness or the lowness your voice may sound. So this can help create a weak or a strong character or a young or an old character. So if I'm a tiny, tiny little mouse who's not very strong, I might have a high-pitched voice. Whereas if I'm a lion and I'm very strong, I have a low-pitched voice. Okay. Another way to change your inflection is the rate of speech. So the speed of your speaking. Now, you never want to speak so quickly that the audience can't understand you, but there can still be a difference between your speed or your rate of speaking to show what's going on. So maybe your character's really nervous, and so you talk really, really fast because you don't really know what to say, and you're just trying to get it out before you can't talk anymore. Or maybe your character's really, really tired of having the same conversation over and over again. So the rate of speech really shows what your character's feeling. Another one is emphasis. So by changing the emphasis of a sentence or a phrase, you can change the meaning. So it's the stress you place on a single syllable, word, or group of words to convey meaning. So like this sentence here, I really like that shirt, could have all sorts of different meanings depending on the emphasis. So let's say I'm going with Susie to the store and she's looking at a shirt and I say, oh, well, I really like that shirt, to try and convince her. Maybe you're not sure about it, but I really like it. Or maybe she didn't hear me very well and she thought that I said I hated it. No, I really like that shirt. Not just a little bit, I really like it. Or maybe she thought I said I hated it, and so I say, I really like that shirt. Okay, not hate it, I like it. Or maybe we're looking at two different shirts, and she's trying to decide. So I say, well, I really like that shirt, not so much the other one. Or maybe she's trying to decide between a shirt and a pair of pants. And so I say, well, I really like that shirt. The pants are hideous, but I like the shirt. So you can change the meaning of a sentence just by using different emphasis. So those are the key points about voice. So you want to remember that you want to always remember to use correct breath control. And that's what's going to help you with your projection versus shouting. You want to make sure that you are always articulating or speaking clearly. You want to make sure you have good inflection, which is that emotion you show in your voice. And you want to use all those tools like pitch, rate, and emphasis to modify and change your voice. Okay? So, real quickly, we're going to open up another document here. And we're going to talk about your assignment for the radio show project. Okay? All right. So the next thing we want to talk about is this character radio show. Now, typically in this class, we do this assignment as a project that you do as a group, but obviously you can't do that this way. So we're going to change it and make it an individual assignment that'll be a little bit shorter. So each actor is going to write a short radio talk show with 3 characters. The script should be a talk show with a host and 2 guests. So you're going to play both the host, who asks questions of 2 different guests. Each group member must voice 3 different characters, the host and the 2 guests, and each character must have at least 1 line of spoken dialogue. You can always do more, but that's the minimum. Each character should have a distinctly different voice, using those changes in inflection with the pitch and the rate and the emphasis. Characters may be human or non-human, but they do have to speak a language we understand. They must be school appropriate, and each guest should have at least 2 questions to answer. Some character ideas. Think about differences in age. Maybe you have a toddler and someone who's in their 90s, or maybe you have a mom character who's in, her 30s or her 40s, or maybe you have a teen character. So try and vary age. They could be human or non-human. They could be strong superhero type characters, or they could be very weak victims. They could have different accents like British, Australian, etc. If you want to be a specific celebrity that actually exists, they still need to be appropriate. So if you're not sure about that character, if they'd be considered to be an appropriate celebrity, don't choose them. And please just avoid things like the president, a touchy subject, okay? Existing fictional characters are fine. Like maybe you can be SpongeBob or Dracula or Elmo. Remember to think about how you change your voice for the different characters, using that pitch, rate, volume, and emphasis. As you write your script, you're going to use the script template to write your script. Each guest should get at least 3 questions to answer, and each actor must have at least 3 different roles. When you record your radio play, you're going to use the WeVideo link in the Google Classroom that I posted for you to record your story with your Chromebook. Project your voice loudly, articulate your words clearly, and use changes in pitch, rate, and volume to show differences between each of the characters. So let's quickly look at the template. So when you look at the template, it's going to look something like this. So it says use the template to type your script and the host and talk show guests. All actions should be shared through the dialogue, not reading aloud stage directions. Actors can use sound effects, however, as long as they're created by your voice. So let's say there's supposed to be a phone ring in your particular scene. That's fine. Then you just make the sound. Don't be pulling up YouTube sound effects. So if I should hear a sound effect of a phone, it might sound something like this. Okay. List each role and who will be reading the role. In this case, you're reading all 3 roles. So if your name is Joe and you're reading Rosie, Charlie Brown, and Lucy. So my example here is not a full example, because remember, you need at least 2 questions for each host or each guest. Sorry. But this is just a brief intro. So you have Rosie's line, Charlie Brown's line, Rosie again, Lucy, and Charlie Brown. Please color code the characters. That makes it a lot easier for me to tell which character is at which time. Okay. And inside of the document is a link to me reading that again. So I'm not going to do that again in this video, but you can click that and hear me reading each voice. Okay. And then when you're ready for recording, you just go into Google Classroom and you will see that link. And the Wi-Fi, there we go. So you'll see that link for how to record your assignment. And you'll want to log in with WeVideo, follow the examples like we went through in that resources assignment for how to make sure that you're actually in the project. If when you open it, it doesn't say new video edit for this project that is the radio show, and you're just making a random blank edit, then that is wrong. So make sure that when you log in, you follow the steps like I've laid out in the wee video. And if you're having trouble, remember, I always will be able to help you during my Zoom hours at 3:30 every day. You can email me if the time for my Zoom call doesn't work for you. I'm happy to set up an individual Zoom call so that I can walk it through on your own computer at a time that's more convenient. So please reach out to me if you're having trouble. Don't just, decide I'm not going to do it because I don't know how. Okay, please reach out to me and I'm happy to help you. Okay, so let me know if you need anything and good luck this week.